Hello everybody, today I'm going to be talking about themed containers, porch pots with personality. So this is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to talk about a lot of different types of containers and some recipes, and I'm going to be planting up some containers. That's what this is all about, is for me to kind of show you how I go about it, my thought process, and kind of some different ideas that you can use at home. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Porch pots and containers, basically what we're talking about is combinations of plants in containers. And it's a lot of fun to do. It's easy to do. You can do it year round, and that's what I love about it so much is that it's so easy to do. There's so many possibilities. It's as simple as you can take a hanging basket and just pop it in a pot and done, and it's super, super easy. There's a lot of ways to do this, and no one way is correct. And so I'm going to give you a couple tips and tricks. I'll give you some simple recipes, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Let's first talk about what you need. And Connie, I saw your question there, so we'll talk about that too at this part. So what will you need to start planting up a combination, a container, a porch pot? Well, you're definitely going to need potting soil. So potting soil is number one. Whenever you plant up a container, always make sure you're using a potting soil, not a garden soil. Garden soils are going to be a little bit thicker, a little bit heavier, and going to become muddy in a pot. So you always want to make sure it's a potting soil. It's going to be a nice mix of usually compost, perlite, vermiculite, maybe a little bit of peat moss. So it's going to have all of these different things kind of blended together. It's also going to have a wetting agent, which is really important. Wetting agents in potting soils prevent your soil from becoming really hard like a brick. So potting soil is going to be nice and rich, and I'll show you a little bit of a close-up image before we get started here, but potting soil should be nice and loose and light and fluffy and easy to work with. It shouldn't be muddy and kind of gross. Of course, you know, if you've got a lot of rain that happened recently or you wet down your soil before you use it, it might be a little bit wetter to work with. But it should lighten up and be loose. So if you let a potting soil bag dry up in your garage or shed for a couple days, it should be nice and loose and easy to work with. And if you squeeze it real tight, it shouldn't form any kind of, kind of mud balls like you would see with a muddy mix. You'll also need, of course, a container to plant in. So I've got a container here. I'm going to plant up a few here in a second, but you're definitely going to want a container. Containers can be really anything, any kind of vessel. And what the most important thing, really what I'm going to be talking about today are outdoor containers. So really what you need with an outdoor container is a drainage hole. It's super, super important. We can kind of, trick ourselves or do some different tricks. I'll show you that as I plant up some of them. If your container doesn't have a drainage hole, we can kind of still use that container. You can drill holes in the bottom of most containers, although I have a great easy trick that's a way to kind of combat that. If you love this container and it doesn't have a drainage hole in the bottom, we can fix that problem for you, and I got a great solution for you. I'll show you here in a second. And of course, you're going to need plants. Plants are probably, I think, what most people get the most scared about. And what I always tell people is go to your local garden center, check out what they got, talk to the garden experts there. They've been doing it for years. We know what goes the best together as far as shade, sun, trailing, bushy, tall, all of those different things. So we've got lots and lots of different ideas that we can share with you. You can also go online and check out lots of samples. I always do that myself just to kind of reinvigorate and kind of think of different ideas. I love Proven Winners website. You can go to Proven Winners website and you can look up all of their different recipes. They've got hundreds and hundreds of them. And really the possibilities are endless of what you can use. And just think about colors and variation. I'm going to talk a lot about that as I kind of go through my thought process when I put together containers. The containers, again, as I mentioned, you can do these year round. So you can do them in the spring, you can do them again in the summer, you can do them again in the fall, even in the winter. And we talk about it year round because it's so much fun and there's so many different possibilities. So really, really great thing that you can do. I saw Connie's question there about, do you put anything in the bottom of the container? I sometimes do, sometimes I don't. So it really depends on the drainage hole. A lot of containers, so let's see, I'll show you an example here. Well, I'll show you an example before we get started. But Connie, sometimes I'll put down like a weed fabric down on the bottom to kind of prevent the soil from clogging up the hole. So like this container right here, I'll pick it up and show you, but you can't really see. It's got one drain hole down there in the bottom. So whenever I have one drainage hole down at the bottom, I kind of get worried because that's the only access that the water has to get out. Now this is a lightweight container. I could drill some extra holes into it if I wanted to, but sometimes I'll put a little piece of weed fabric over the top of it, maybe a coffee filter if anybody still uses them, and those kind of help prevent the soil from becoming compacted into that hole. The most important thing you can do is when you have a container, is making sure that that drain hole's free. And every once in a while you might tilt it over a little bit, take a screwdriver and just poke it up there, make sure it's still draining really well, especially if your soil is staying moist for a long period of time. And then you could put rock in the bottom too. A lot of people use rock, or even like broken clay pots. I have lots of broken clay pots. Unfortunately, they break. I love terracotta containers. I absolutely love them. But sometimes they break, and I'll take them and smash them up with a hammer into some smaller pieces. Be careful, they are sharp. But those make a great kind of base layer as well, to kind of help fill it up some. Some people will use perlite if you've got a heavy container to allow the moisture to still go through, but some people use rock to take a lighter container and make it heavier at the base. So if you're using like a plastic container, something like this, you might put some rock in the bottom to help kind of prevent it from tipping over in the wind. All of those are great options. You can use all of them, but you don't have to either. If you're using a professional potting soil like our McDonald potting soil, then you shouldn't have any issues. You can put it right into the pot and get planting. So super, super easy. Donna, I see your question about will this be available? Yes, all of our webinars are available on our website at mcdonaldgardencenter.com, as well as on our YouTube channel. So you can always check those out. All right, so let's talk about kind of my simple recipe that I always love to use. I use it in pretty much every container. I rarely kind of go away from it because it's really easy to remember. It's fun, it's easy, and if you use this simple recipe, this simple idea, then it'll be very, very easy to kind of accomplish a very professional and very exciting container that'll last all season. So the first thing that I always like to talk about are thrillers. So when there's thrillers, fillers, and spillers. Easy to remember. So here in this image, you'll see the thrillers. The thrillers are usually your upright components, something that's going to be taller, something that's going to kind of put on a higher show. So I kind of break my container down, my combination into 3 different layers. A thriller, which is going to be typically a higher plant, then your filler in the middle, and then the spiller out the side. But you can see that's an Angelonia over there. It's a really great thriller. I'm not using that today. I'm going to use some other examples, but a really, really great one because it's blooming. It can be a grass. It can be a lot of different things. It could be a house plant. It could be a palm. It could be 100 different things. There's millions and millions of different options here, but thrillers are going to be your upright component. Really, really easy to remember that. Fillers are going to fill out your middle portion. So you can see here that great petunia there, really easy kind of filler. That will actually spill a little bit too, but fillers are typically going to fill out the middle portion. So you got your thriller with the height, then your filler is going to be kind of in the middle portion, and then of course, last but not least is the spiller, which in this case is that sweet potato vine. I know we've probably all used sweet potato vine. It is an awesome, awesome spiller. It trails over the side. It'll get really, really long over the season. You can let it kind of hit the ground if you want to, or you can prune it very easily and keep it in check a little bit, but sweet potato vine is a great one. There's a lot of other options. I'm going to show you some. I'm going to use some sweet potato vine today, but I'm also going to use some Dichondra, some Scaevola, so there's lots and lots of choices out there. And I'll show you some of those. And of course, that is just another way of kind of completing your container. So thrillers, fillers, and spillers, great way to, if you can include those 3 components, it doesn't have to be just those 3, but if you include those 3 components, then you're going to have a great looking professional container. So it's a great way to kind of do that. Let's see, I say Cricket do you use fillers for really tall planters? Yeah, I do. So we can talk about, a little bit about the rule of thirds. I'll talk about that here real quick. So the rule of thirds, and I think this is kind of what you're talking about, fillers in a tall container, you might be talking about, for down in the container itself. Yes, you can use fillers. I might use, straight perlite or, but I still probably say just go with potting soil. It's actually going to be cheaper for you. Some people use packing peanuts, but I never know what those packing peanuts have been used for, or water bottles or things like that. I like to fill it if it's a tall container and it's heavy enough. I'd fill it with potting soil. That'd be my best option. Now, the rule of thirds that I mentioned, and so if you're talking about using fillers, kind of like I was just talking about, thrillers, fillers, and spillers, with the rule of the thirds is if your container is short and squatty, then you might want your container on top, your plants on top, your combination on top to be 2/3 of the container's height. So something like this, I might want to get, let's say this is 12 inches. So I would want my plant, my thriller most importantly, to get probably at least 2 feet tall so that I've got 2 feet here and a foot of pot. Now the reverse of that would be, let's say I've got a 24-inch tall planter. Then I could go as short as 12 inches and let my planter be the taller portion. So you that's kind of how you do the rule of thirds. Everything in landscape design, interior design is always in odd numbers. It's more appealing to the eye. It doesn't always have to be. I'm going to do some that might not even be odd numbers today, but that's okay. But I do like to kind of keep in proportion my container, my combination with my container. So if it's 12 inches tall, I don't want my combination on top, my plants, to get only 12 inches tall, because then it's too even, it's too proportional. You want to get a little bit higher or be a little bit shorter. So it's kind of a simple rule of thirds there that you can use for your containers. Last thing, or not last thing, but the next thing I want to talk about is don't forget to feed your planters. You're going to see me use my biotone starter. I love to use that right into the soil. That's a great way of getting your plant started. It's a starter fertilizer, but it's also got mycorrhizae and beneficial bacteria that really help get your plants off to a great start. And then of course our green leaf plant foods. There's a couple different options. I'll show you a couple different options. Blooming and rooting is a great one, but I will tell you annuals are heavy feeders. And almost all of my planters today are going to have annuals in them, which means they are going to want to be fed. If you ever see your plants struggling a little bit, almost 100% of the time, it's because they need more food. Because most of our annuals are going to bloom for the entire season that they're blooming in. So right now we're going into, the spring and summer, but even in the fall, if you start to talk about pansies are extremely heavy feeders. And so we want to make sure we're using plant foods. I use biotone starter when I first plant my plants, and then I use green leaf about 2 weeks later to keep those going. And then every 3 to 4 weeks, I'm putting a little bit more. Why? Because containers are going to drain nutrients. You got the drainage hole, and we're going to be watering these containers. So we're going to be washing some of those nutrients out the hole if they don't get used up. So we want to keep on applying throughout the entire season. I've already seen it in some of my containers, when we have lots of rain like we've had this spring, but really it can happen anytime when maybe we get, a dreary weather pattern where it's been a lot of overcast skies for 2 or 3 weeks. Those plants are struggling and they probably need feed once it starts to warm up or once the sun starts to come out. So it's always important to remember to feed your plants, especially annuals. They love to have food. And I mentioned watering. I didn't do a slide on watering, but watering is important. Of course, containers are going to dry out faster than in the ground. Depends on the container you're using. Terracotta is a great container. It does dry out a little bit faster. Plastic pots are pots that don't allow any airflow into the soil, which is a downfall of them, honestly, because airflow in the soil is a good thing, but they won't dry out as fast. But all containers are above the soil level, which means they're up and exposed, and they're going to evaporate moisture a lot quicker. They're going to dry out a little bit faster because of wind, and typically if you have them out in the sun, they're going to dry out faster. I always recommend hanging baskets. I love hanging baskets. Hanging baskets are going to be the first things to dry out. Then your containers are going to be the next. And then everything in the ground's last. So really kind of think about that. You always got to pay attention to your hanging baskets, then your containers, and then what's in the ground when we're going through drier periods. But if you're using a good potting soil, it should hold moisture for a fair amount of time. So today we're going to be talking about themed containers. So I'm actually going to plant up a coastal container, and then I'm going to do a tropical container, and then I'm going to do a colored themed container. So here's just a couple different options. These kind of remind me of a coastal look. I'm maybe not that urn planter per se. That urn maybe isn't quite a coastal look, but I think of coastal, I think of blues, I think of, kind of that kind of silvery color. I think of, beach movement. I love to have some movement in my container if I'm at the beach. So kind of if you're thinking of like a coastal look, a lot of people think blue containers. It could be really any color container. You can use really anything, even terracotta colored, I think works fine for coastal. And then it's really whatever your theme is. These are just some options there. Tropical works everywhere. So tropical is obviously a little bit brighter in color. So tropicals are going to be, your cannas and your elephant ears and palms and a lot of coleus and sweet potato vine. You're thinking oranges, yellows, reds, purples. Those are typically the colors you're going to see in a tropical container. It's a little bit brighter in color. Think hibiscus, this croton I'm going to show you here when we go to full screen mode, and I'll show you. I love the croton because it actually has all of the tropical colors right in it. So I love to use that as something to help with tropical kind of container work. And then of course color themed. So the white has become so popular. So just a pure white container with silvers and whites is a lot of fun. I personally love pink. Pink is my favorite garden color. So I'm going to be doing a pink container today, which will be a lot of fun. And then of course yellow or straight purple like we saw at the beginning. So you can do just straight one color. You can keep it monochromatic and keep it all one color with lots of different plants that pull in those colors. A lot of times I like to break it up a little bit, and you'll see that when I make my pink container that I like to throw in a little bit of a contrasting color. You can go do and just a straight contrasting container. Those are some of my favorites because they're usually very easy, where you're going to see that a little bit when I do my tropical container. I use a lot of contrasting colors because I want sharp kind of, green to hot pink to, burgundy to lime green to red. So you can kind of see all of those colors worked into that. And you can start to play with some of those colors. I'll show you that as well, where you can start to find the smaller color in a plant and pull it out with a brighter color. So you can see that right there in that pink container, where that lighter pink, if you got real close to that container, you'd see that lighter pink bloom actually has a hotter pink center. And then that's what the hot pink petunia pulls out. So it really blends really well together. The yellow one up there has a yellow, I believe, million bell, and then it's got a coleus that has a little kind of lime green, chartreuse green, a stripe in there, and then there's just a green grass in it. So lots and lots of different options in these containers. Like I said, there's millions and millions of combinations, but today we're going to talk about themed containers. And so, hello, and we're going to plant up some containers. I'm going to have a lot of fun with this. This is going to be really enjoyable. I love doing this, and I think a lot of people get a lot out of seeing me actually create things, and so that's what we're going to do today. I'm actually going to take this one down. I'm going to do this one probably last. I'm going to actually, and I'm going to be moving around a lot, so bear with me because I'll be shifting some things around. I'm actually going to plant up a coastal container real quick so you can see how that works. So I picked out this container, and there's lots and lots of containers out there. So I picked out this one because to me it kind of looks like a rope. Kind of has that blue color, which I love for coastal looks, but it's also got this kind of rope pattern. There's planters that are shell planters. There's lots and lots of different options for a coastal look. And like I said, it doesn't have to be blue. It could be green, it could be white, it could be gray, it could be a lot of different colors. I just picked this one because it's got a little bit of an earthy kind of vibe to it, but it's also got that kind of rope kind of pattern all the way around it. So it kind of reminded me of kind of a coastal, beachy, sailboat type of idea look. And then why I also wanted to show you this was because here's the option that you have, especially if your container doesn't have drainage holes. So a lot of people will plant in like, an old wagon or something like that, and you're kind of like, I don't want to drill a hole in this. An old fountain or something you can use, but I love, there's a lot of containers that I've owned in the past that don't have drainage holes, and I don't really want to drill a hole into it and hopefully break it or unfortunately break it. So this is a great option. This is an insert basically. This is just a nursery grower pot. We sell these here at the garden center, and you can pick them up, and this one fits perfectly into this container. So it's actually not going to show up. We actually have the fabric containers too. They're called smart pots. They work great as kind of a liner. And what's nice about this is if this container didn't have drainage holes, this one does. But if it didn't, then I could pull this out, I can water it, and then I can put it back in. Or I can water it, and if I think I've overfilled it and this container is holding a lot of moisture, then I can take it out and drain it out. I do this a lot with my indoor plants. I mean, you're going to find a lot of your indoor pottery these days don't have drainage holes because really what it is a really fancy pot cover, but also saucer. So that's a great option. Now I will tell you, outdoor plants don't typically need saucers. If you're on a deck or porch or something like that that you want to kind of protect and you don't want moisture built up around it, then yes, you can use a saucer. But I don't typically recommend them. If you don't need it, then don't use it, because what happens is the saucer will fill up with water, then you've got to empty it. And if you don't empty it, it's just like if you stood in the bathtub for 48 hours. Go stand in the bathtub for 48 hours and your feet are going to rot off, just like that's what you always hear whenever you hear people say it's got wet feet. It's because it's been sitting in too much moisture. So saucers are great for inside. Saucers protect what you have your planter on. Saucers are not really designed to hold moisture and wick it back into the soil. That's really not the idea of them. It's really as a protection for whatever you have your container sitting on. So think of it that way. If your container doesn't have drainage holes, it's a glorified saucer, but it's keeping your plants nice and good looking. And I love containers, and that's always where I start. I find my container first, and then I go from there. So I'm actually going to plant into this plastic pot. So that'll be how I kind of do it so that I can show you that you can actually create an insert. It's really easy to do. So what I chose here was, of course, I started with my thriller. I actually picked out two, and I'll kind of decide as I go along here which ones I'll use. So I grabbed this iris, this variegated iris, which is really, really pretty. I'll show you that here in a second. And then I grabbed this lavender. So I love lavender. So this iris kind of reminded me of grass, of course. It's very, very vertical. I love that kind of straight vertical habit. It actually will get a kind of a light lavender kind of, or a darker purple bloom. But I just love the foliage on this. And the thing that's cool about irises, this is actually a perennial, so I can go plant it in my yard later if I wanted to. It's actually pretty much evergreen, so I can leave it in this container and keep planting things around it. You know, once the fall hits, I can do something. But to me, it just reminded me of kind of a coastal look. I could have used a regular grass. I could have done a lot of different things, but I really, really like this. I just love that kind of, that white variegation in there. It's really cool. Kind of reminds me of maybe like a snake plant. This is a lavender, so this one's called Sensational Lavender. And the reason I chose this one is because it's got that movement I talked about. I love that movement, that wispy habit. It's got the silvery green foliage, and it's going to get these little blooms that are going to start to pop out all over it that are going to be these lavender blooms. So I really like this one. It's big, it's bold, it's my thriller. It's kind of fuller than this one, so you can see kind of the difference there. It's a little bit more wild. So we'll decide. I'm not quite sure which one I'm going to use yet. I do already have my potting soil in here. I did pick out some other plants. So I was kind of thinking about this silvery theme and this kind of lilac theme, or that kind of coastally blue look. You know, I started with this lavender, and then I found the iris, and I wasn't quite sure. The lavender has that kind of soft purple bloom. So I found this sun patient. Love sun patients. These things bloom like it's their job. I mean, they just kick all season long. And this is going to be my filler. So I've got my thrillers. I got one or another choice to make, but this is going to be my filler, which is going to kind of fill out the middle portion of my container and give me blooms all season. And then along with that silver idea, I found this great Dusty Miller. So this is actually called, I can never pronounce it, but Angel Wings Sinico. But it's really kind of in the Dusty Miller family, but it's Angel Wings. It's a big, bold leaf, really, really silvery in color. This would also be kind of in that filler kind of category. So I also got a Dichondra, which I love. This is one of my favorite spillers. So when we're talking about our thrillers, fillers, and spillers, this would be one of my spillers. It's one of my favorites. And the reason I love it so much is it just trails right along the pot. A lot of spillers, which are cool too, will kind of bound out a little bit and kind of, come off to the side and kind of pop back up and then maybe spill again. This one just goes right along the container. So I kind of call that like a hard fall, where it's just going to fall right along the container and stay really, really close. So I love that. I think it's really, really cool. Let's see, what am I going to choose? I think I'm going to try and get 4 in here. I know that's against my odd theory, because I really love this Dichondra and I really want this to spill out, and I need a spiller, right? I got to have a spiller. I can kind of try and make my Angel Wings. I'm going to see if I can get that in there too. So because I'm doing that, I'm going to omit the lavender. I really like this white and silver theme. This plant, this iris is just speaking to me. So that's what I'm going to start with. So I always like to have some options. I like to, when I'm here shopping around and looking around, I like to put them on my cart and just kind of put them together and kind of envision what they would look like. Sometimes I'll even buy something and say, this isn't quite what I wanted, but I found a couple options. I'm going to take them home and kind of see, and then I'll make a decision, and maybe I'll bring one back or I'll find a different pot for it. So all I'm going to do is just lightly tap this container off. And put that off to the side here. And then every time I ever plant a container, I always, either when I'm planting it in the ground or I'm planting it in a container, I like to rough up the root ball a little bit. So just kind of lightly loosen it up. So we're just going to lightly loosen that up. I'm going to make sure my soil level is good. And what I mean by that is I like to have a little bit of a lip. So whenever you plant a container, I don't like to have it, too high. If I have it at the same level of the edge of the pot, then it's actually going to create a very difficult environment for me to water in. So I want a little bit of a reservoir, basically, that I can kind of put in there. So I always like to plant it about an inch below the grade of the pot. So wherever my container is, I like to go about an inch down. I'm gonna put my gloves on just because it's a handy thing to have. Use your gloves if you want to. Some people don't, but I like to use gloves just in case something happens. I don't think I'm using, well, actually I do have one plant that has a little thorns on it. So traditional people that plant their containers most likely will plant their thriller right in the middle and then go with something all the way around the edge. I like to kind of throw a little bit of asymmetry into it, especially since I find that a lot of my containers end up, against a wall or on the steps, and I kind of have a front and a back that I really want to show off. So I've got my front where I want my spiller and my filler to kind of show off, and then my thriller always tends to kind of be in the back. But sometimes it doesn't always have to be that case. In fact, I'll do one that's going to be a little bit different when I do the tropical container. But this one I'm going to let me make sure I get my soil level right. So this one I'm going to put right back here in the back, and then I'm just going to position it. So this is my back of my container, this is my front up here. So I'm going to position this plant so that it's got the right spread that I want. It's showing off the colors, and so if I put it like this, it looks better than if I put it like this, right? So I like that. Every plant's, I think, got a kind of a front, a back, and a side. So I'm going to put this right up against the back of my planter there. And then what I want to do is put my biotone in. So remember when I mentioned the feeding your plants? This is very, very important that you include some biotone. I like to put it right on the root system. That's how it works the best. So I'm just going to sprinkle probably about a half a cup into this container. And then I'm just going to put it right onto the root ball, and it's going to be right there in the soil for my plants to get right into the root system. That's how that biotone works the best. So I've got that situated. I'm going to shift this over to the side here. There we go. All right, so I've got my container, I've got this guy planted up against the back, and I've got all this space here in the front. Now, depending on where you're planting this or where you're putting this container, depends on probably where you would put your fillers and spillers and all of those different things. I am actually going to put all 4 in there. I'm going to have my filler in the front, which seems weird, but this is going to look cool, and that's because these are very similar colors. So I want this kind of color of that sun patient right in the middle, and this coastal look will come together. So I'm actually going to take this Dichondra, and again, whenever you have these kind of lighter plants that you're worried about, just put your hand in and then just tilt the pot upside down and just give it a little squeeze, and it'll come right off. So that way you're not kind of pulling the plant by the top of the plant. Sometimes when you got stronger plants like this iris, I can kind of hold on to that, tap the pot off. But in this case, something like this Dichondra that's a little bit lighter, then I like to kind of just put my hand over the top, tilt the pot over. It's really, really easy. All right, so this one I'm gonna put on this side. Doesn't really matter. It depends on, of course, where you're putting the planter. And then I always like to take my plants and kind of manipulate them a little bit and kind of put them off to the side. Now, a lot of you might say you're putting way too much into that planter. I'm doing this. I got a party this weekend. It's, maybe it's Memorial Day weekend. Maybe it's 4th of July weekend. Maybe it's something that I'm having, a wedding or something. I've got company coming over and I want to put on a show. Now, that means I'm going to have to deal with some issues in the future. Probably in about 2 or 3 months, I'm going to have to deal with probably either cutting a plant back or taking a plant out, or those types of things or maybe I'm watering more because the root system's taken over. But a lot of people will start with a smaller plant or a smaller section, or maybe only do 2 or 3 plants. And give the plant more soil capacity so they can grow throughout the season. But I'm doing this also so that you can kind of see, a full effect when it's done. So now I'm going to take this awesome angel wings, and we're going to loosen up that root ball a little bit. And then I'm going to actually try and get a little bit of like a kind of a lean on this, a little tilt on this. And what I mean by that is I want it to be kind of facing a little bit of a direction there. I kind of want it spilling a little bit. I don't want it sitting just perfectly straight upright. There we go. That looks pretty good. And then it's as simple as just popping in my sun patient. And this lavender color is just going to look awesome with all these silver colors. We're going to loosen up the root ball. It's going to go right down into that biotone. And I'm just going to kind of turn it so that it's situated right in there. And just like that, I've got a great container. So now this Dichondra is going to fill over on the side here. I'll give you a little spin. That would look great just by itself, just those 3. And again, it doesn't always have to be a spiller per se. This filler here, this angel wings Seneco, will actually kind of get bushy and kind of trail over a little bit. But the sun patient will always stay kind of vertical and bushy. So this is really your true filler and that color that you want. So I love those 2 components. The Dichondra just fit over here on this side to kind of fill up this void. Plus, if you spin it to the back here, you're going to see this kind of empty space back here. There's nothing you can do about that, But as this Dichondra kind of grows out, I can kind of pull it over here and let it kind of trail back over this backside. So this whole backside can actually become this Dichondra kind of falls. But even from the front, I'd want it to kind of spill out a little bit. And that just gives you, again, that thriller, the filler, and the spiller components. And when you have that, you get this kind of great show. And in this container, it kind of matches that silvery glaze to this container with the rope. Looks just like a coastal looking container to me. And this is going to be great in full sun. All of these plants love full sun. The Sun Patient, the Dichondra, the Dusty Miller, and even the Iris. And so this would look really, really good. I could have used the lavender. The lavender would have been a little bit more on the green side. I really wanted to keep it in that silvery kind of look. So I think this one turned out great. All I would need to do now is just kind of pop in some soil here and there. So let me grab my handy trowel. These are great trowels. I love these. These are super easy to use. We've got some great little hand tools. For a long time, I kind of said, what am I ever going to do with a hand trowel? Well, once you start planting up containers, this is like your number one tool. So I've got this little pot here full of soil. I am using our McDonald Natural and Organic potting soil. So that's what I'm using to fill up my container with, and also to kind of backfill around on my plants. So here I'll just kind of hold my plants off to the side and then put my soil in where I need to. Now I'm not going to feed this for a couple weeks because that biotone that I used is my starter fertilizer, and so I don't really need to, for one. And two, that beneficial bacteria that's in there, we don't want to be putting a fertilizer on top of that. We don't want to give it too much food that can maybe kind of hurt that. And now here's the great thing. If I wanted to, at the end of the season, I can go and just take this right out. So I can take this, slip it right out, and I can replant it, and then I can pop it back in, especially if my container doesn't have drainage holes. So that one turned out really, really good. I'm really excited about that one. So I think what we'll do is we'll actually pop it over here. So there we go. All right, so that one turned out great. All right, so let me clean up my mess here a little bit. I'm going to do a tropical theme. Actually, I'm going to save the tropical for last. Let's do my pink theme. So pink is my favorite garden color. I just love pink crepe myrtles. I think pretty much every year I do a pink container for the front of my house. I just love pink containers. I chose this white pot because it's going to really, really kind of show off that really hot pink color. I love pinks, the true pinks, the clear pinks. Anything pink just kind of stands out to me in the garden. It really shows up well. I think it matches pretty much any house color. You can never go wrong with pink. And to me, it just speaks a different language, so I just love pink, and that's why I chose it. So that's what I'm going to go with. So, of course, I started with my container. This is actually a lightweight container, so it's very similar to probably like a molded, what you would call maybe like a fiber clay, where it's got kind of a fiberglass inside. I don't know if you can quite see that, but there's a little bit of this kind of fiberglass look on the inside. It's a lighter weight container, so it's a nice lightweight container, whereas the first one was ceramic that I planted up. This one is a little bit lighter weight. It's a nice container though, and I love that bright white color, that kind of modern look. It's going to look really, really good with the pink. So let's start with my thriller. So in this case, I'm actually going to be doing a little bit of a squattier planter because I really want it to fill out. But this Gumfrina is what I'm using. I love this guy. This one's called Gumfrina Pink or Trufolia. So really, really nice. Look at all of those little pink blooms. I love this plant in the landscape. It is absolutely amazing in the landscape. It's a great container plant as well. In the landscape, it actually can get about 36 to 48 inches tall, so 3 to 4 feet tall. In one season. It doesn't stop blooming. It's pretty drought tolerant, which makes it a great container plant as well. So this is actually going to put some height on it. It's probably going to get about 18 to 24 inches in this container. Really, really cool. So this is going to be my thriller. This is going to be my upright component. It's not quite as big right now, but it's going to get up there. So I'm going to give it some time to grow and get there. But I really, really like that hot pink. It's going to look really, really good. So that's my thriller. And then I kind of got a little bit like, there's so many pinks to choose from. I love bubblegum. It's one of my favorite Supertunias. But this one really kind of spoke to me today. This is called the Supertunia Picasso in purple. So even though it says purple, it's really a pink. It does have a little bit of a purple center, which means it actually pairs well with like kind of that burgundy sweet potato vine. So if you ever wanted to use that sweet potato vine, that would actually pull that color out. So it's a great contrasting color that pulls out that eye. Remember when I talked about, pulling out those subtle colors? That's a great way of doing that. But what I really like about this one is that edge. You see that edge around each bloom is kind of that chartreuse lime green. So I'm going to use it with sweet potato vine. Sweet potato vine looks great with this. It's a great color combination. It's a great kind of contrast. So remember when I said if you're doing a container where it's all one color, so in this case pink, throw in one thing that maybe is a slightly different color. I love to kind of throw in a green. It makes it very easy. So that chartreuse green, it's not like a true, completely different color. It pulls out the color on this, gives me a great spiller. The nice thing about petunias is they will spill, but also fill. So these are going to kind of do two things for me. It's going to kind of tumble over the side of the pot, but it's going to fill that middle space for me as well. So I also grabbed a scaevola. I absolutely love scaevolas. It's one of my favorite plants because it almost seems like it's indestructible. Sometimes if you forget to water it, it looks like it's just dead, like it's just hanging dead. And then you water it, it perks right back up. They don't ever seem to stop blooming. They just bloom all season long. They love the heat. So this is going to be a really good hot container for me. It's going to go out in full sun. It's going to be super, super bright and pink, and it's going to last all season. So I'm going to pop one of these in there too. I think I'm going to kind of put it in the center. You're going to see what I do with it here in just a second. So I do need a little bit of extra soil. I am using my McDonald's organic potting soil. So I just need to bring this soil level up a little bit. I have some in here already. There we go. That's much better. So now I can actually move it around a little bit now that I've got it a little bit fuller. I'm going to start with my thriller. Now I could put it right in the center. Again, I could if this was going to be a container that was going to be out on my front, out on a deck or on the center of a table that people are going to see 360, then I could put this in the center, and then I'd be simple as just putting, two of the petunias in there and two sweet potato vine and be done. I am going to put this one a little bit different because I want to get that scaevola in there because I want to get a little bit of a different shade of pink in there. So you're going to see how I do that here. So I'm going to take this Gomphrena Globe Amaranth Trufola. So really, really cool one. But Gomphrena is what I've always called it. It's a fun name to say. Kind of like the Kufias and the Gompphrenas, and it's a really, really fun one. So I'm going to put this, like I said, kind of that inch depth, at least an inch, inch and a half maybe, so that it's nice and I got a good lip to be able to work with. And then I just want to position it, like I said, so that it's more on this shape because this is going to be the back of my container. So I think I kind of got that. I think that's how I want it, is right there. Loosen up the root ball, and then what I do now that I've got my filler in, grab my biotone. Got my thriller, sorry. I think I said filler. So then I'm going to just take my biotone. It's a little bit of a bigger container, so I'm probably going to do about a cup in here. You really can't put too much of this in there. That's why I love Espoma products. They're all organic, they're safe. You're not going to, if you accidentally dump the whole bag in there, you're not going to kill your plant. Get it right up to the root system and spread it out my soil around so it gets to the other plants, and I'm good to go there. So I've got my biotone in, I've got my Gomphrena, I've got my thriller in. I know it's not as thrilling as some of the other ones that I'll use, but this guy will get up here and it'll bloom all season long. It is absolutely amazing. Then I'm going to take this petunia, this Picasso. I'm going to put it right over here, and you're just going to start to see all of that pink color just kind of come to life. And the other thing I love about petunias is that they kind of bound throughout the container, and they'll start to mix with other things. I love that Diamond Frost Euphorbia is another one of my favorite plants to use. But this is going to kind of wrap around and really fill out my container, hence why it's a filler. So really, really nice one here. So we got that going. Let me just kind of position that there a little bit more. I think I actually, yep, oh no, I'm good. I want to make sure it's level with my other plants, so if I need to get some other soil underneath it, then I can. And then I like to kind of try and pack some soil in around the gaps as I kind of go around, which means I will need some more soil now. Just keep putting a little bit more soil in until I get it to the level that I need it to be in. It's a little bit easier to work with the soil while it's in there. I like to get as many kind of gaps and crevices filled in before I finish up, because once I finish, I just kind of want to be able to sprinkle it into a couple little holes and be done with it. So it's a little bit easier to finish up. All right, so I've got my other petunia here. Now I do want to get that scaevola in here because I really want you to see how these different shades of pink, because this hot pink of this petunia is very similar to the Gumfrena hot pink. So I want to use this scaevola because it's a little bit of a lighter pink. And I just love scaevola. So typically with scaevola, I would put it towards the edge because I would want it to spill over the side and be my spiller. This one's obviously growing a little bit more upright right now, but it will spill. But because it's kind of growing upright, and I'm going to kind of use that to let it kind of bound throughout my container. So right now when I put it in there, it looks like, okay, this is way too much, right? It's way bigger, or it's about the same size as my thriller, which is not what I want. But you're going to see what I do with it here in a second, if everything works out for me. And I think it will. So I'm going to put my scaevola there. And then I'm going to take my other petunia. And as I mentioned, I always like to be, as much as I possibly can, I like to be as asymmetrical as possible. I try not to get bound up into symmetry. So if I do things that are too symmetrical, I tend to find myself not real happy, because if something happens to one of the plants, then I've lost my symmetry. So at least with an asymmetrical container, I got a lot of opportunities to kind of play with it. If something happens down the road, it's a little bit easier to kind of combat, because then it's like, oh, I got to go to the garden center and get another, Picasso petunia, and they don't have it. Well, now I've got a lopsided symmetrical container. So I try and be asymmetrical as possible. So that's why I put this petunia here. I could have taken this petunia and moved it back to the back, so I have two petunias in the back next to the Gumfrena, the scaevola in the middle, and then the sweet potato vine in the front. But I'm going to keep this a little asymmetrical here. I need a little bit more soil. Because these are 4-inch containers of sweet potato vine. And this chartreuse lime green is going to look just awesome with this petunia. It's going to look really, really cool. And then this lime green of this sweet potato vine is just going to throw in enough contrast. It's not going to take away from the other pinks, but it's just going to be just enough that it'll kind of throw in a little bit of contrast there and give me a little bit of a different show. All right, a little bit more soil. So over here, I've got this pocket. You can't quite see it, but right here, I've got another pocket that I'm going to put my last sweet potato vine in. A little bit more soil, because again, it's a smaller pot. I was doing 6-inch containers first. So I'm doing my bigger containers first. I do typically like to go, for some reason, I just always like to go thriller, filler, spiller as I kind of work through my container and plant it. And typically, like I said, your spillers are going to be towards the edge of the container. So it seems to work out best that way too. So make sure I need just a little bit more soil. I'm actually just going to take a handful, put it in there. Perfect. All right, so before I go too far, I want to get everything kind of filled in a little bit, and then I'll show you how, this is one of my favorite things to do with containers, is take my plants and manipulate them a little bit, and just kind of be able to change them up and kind of show you what you can do and what the professionals do. I mean, this is what florists do, is after they do everything, they tinker with it for a little bit. So they're going to play with it to get it exactly how you see in the magazines and in the shows and different things like that. It's going to look great. All right, so that's good. I don't want to pat it down too tight either, so I don't want to like pack it in real tight. I'm going to take, I just want the soil to be nice and loose, and then I can come through, and when I water, the water's not going to billow up at the top. It's going to be able to work its way right through. I'm going to just take a second to kind of clean up my container. This is a white container, so I've got lots and lots of dirt showing all over it, so I want to kind of clean that up. Also, if you get dirt on the leaves of your plants, that's okay. It will leave marks over time, so it's always a good idea to kind of, when you get done with a container, if you got lots of dirt on your leaves, then I would just take a hose and just lightly mist it off. Always when you water your containers, water the soil, not the plants. Try your best to get into the soil, not into the plants. But right after you plant it, if you got lots of dirt all over it, it's not a bad idea to wash it off. Some people will take like a little broom or a little kind of rake, or even just their hands, and just kind of, go through and work with the plants and kind of dust it off a little bit from that dirt. All right, so here's my container. Doesn't look too bad right now, but I'm going to actually take it and kind of work with some of these plants here. So I'm going to try and do this so you can see what I'm doing. So as I kind of do this, I can see, you know, some bad leaves or anything like that. But my petunia, I really want to be kind of the show here. So this is going to kind of come over the side. So as you can see, I'm just gently kind of pushing the plant so that all my blooms are facing outward. And then I'm going to take this sweet potato and just kind of work it around as well. So that you want it kind of popping in and out. So you kind of want your plants to be mixing up so that you can see a little bit here and there. So I'm going to take this sweet potato, kind of do the same thing. Then I've got this great scaevola that you really probably can't even quite see. I've got a little broken Gomphrena bloom. It's bothering me. So I'm going to snip that off. Got another one here. That's okay. That's going to happen. So you can see that Gomphrena kind of almost gets a little lost. As I mentioned, it's going to get bigger. It's going to fill out. But this scaevola's got all these long spikes. So I'm actually going to take those and work them through my plants so that they're kind of popping all over the place. And that's really a simple technique. Plants are very flexible for the most part. I mean, other than like your woody plants, like your shrubs, most of your plants are going to be pretty flexible and you're going to be able to work with them pretty well. So just by taking that scaevola and working it through, and what that's also going to help it do is it's going to kind of start to grow that way. So that way you've got these plants popping all over the place. Some plants will do it naturally, like the Picasso petunia will start to grow all over the place and start to pop in here and there and everywhere, but this is going to help kind of aid in that process and get these plants to kind of mix up a little bit easier. So really all I was doing was just kind of, again, manipulating the plants a little bit, being able to pop my scaevola in and out so that it kind of starts to do its thing and kind of is showing up in different places. It's planted right in the center, but here it is. Here's some over here. Here's some over here, it's over here. So you can really see that spread that it gave me. And this plant's just gonna fill out more and more and really kind of pop everywhere. And then the petunia is just gonna be an amazing show of pink. And then this Gomphrena is gonna get taller and kind of be my background plant. So it's gonna be my thriller. It's gonna be really, really cool. So apologize about the technical difficulties. I will make sure that we try and get that corrected in the future. It hasn't happened for a while, so I apologize for that. If we lose anybody again, this will be recorded and put up on our Facebook page, as well as our website, as well as our YouTube channel, where you can check out all of my videos in the past and all of my webinars. So definitely you can check that out anytime. And so if you've got to run or it's not working for you, check us out a little bit later. We'll make sure we have it posted. All right. I got another little Gomphrena bloom there that had broken on me. But this is my container. This is my pink one. I love this one. It looks really, really great with that white container. So I really like this one. This one turned out well. All right, next we're going to do our tropical container. So I'm going to move this one off to the side. Now, I always like tropical containers in a terracotta pot. I don't know why. I'm just always kind of partial to that. So I'm going to use this plastic terracotta pot. I really like to use plastic a lot because it's lightweight, it's easy to use. I can slip it into a ceramic pot later if I wanted to. But I love terracotta, even a real terracotta pot. I mean, I've got some in here. I love them, they're great. I use them all the time. For this one, because I'm going to put a fair amount of plant material in here, I'm going to try to, then I kind of wanted a bigger pot. So whenever I think of tropical, of course I think of those bright colors. This is one of my favorite plants to use. It's called a croton. I'm not going to actually use this in my planter, but I always have one. I get one every year. We just got a great crop in, so they're awesome to use. I like to just plant one in a terracotta pot. I think they look great in terracotta, and it works for a very long season. It gives me that tropical vibe, that tropical color that I love, but it also gives me that fall color. So when I get to the fall season, it gives me some great fall colors. You can see that yellow, the green on the undersides of these leaves. You can see that burgundy. So it just always has these different colors going on with it, and it just screams to me tropical for some reason. Of course, it is a tropical plant, but it just has all those colors in there. As the older the leaves get, you can see even more of that variegation. Look at that leaf. I mean, that leaf has red, it's got purple, it's got yellow, it's got green, it's got a little bit of that lime green, it's got a lot of colors going on in it. So you can really see why I love this plant. So I use this plant a lot to pair with a tropical container, but also to kind of just get me in the frame of thinking about, tropical plants. Now, I also love pinks and apricots and different colors like that, peaches. They're really, really fun to kind of try and use. But I, again, always start with my thriller. And in this case, I'm going to try and do a little bit of a tropical look for my front porch, which is a little bit shadier. So I've got an overhang. I want that tropical feel, but I don't have full blazing sun, so I can't go with the hibiscus or the mandevillas. I need something that's going to be able to take a little bit of that shade. This one actually is going to get me towards the side of being either a sun or a shade container, but you'll see what I'm talking about as I get going. So this is going to be my thriller. This is a Phoenix Robolini palm. It's an awesome palm. You can see that really shiny leaf. It is really outstanding. Now, remember when I mentioned I put my gloves on for a reason? That's because all of these thorns in here. They do have some thorns in here. They're pretty flexible. They're not real sharp. I mean, I can put my hand in here. Without a glove, I probably wouldn't like it that much. They're a little pokey. So just be careful of that. Some palms do have some small thorns on it, but this is a great looking palm. These actually you can bring inside during the winter and grow throughout the year, but it's a really easy palm to grow. It's actually one of the better palms if you're going to be in a sunnier location. So like a lot of people love those Majesty palms. Majesty palms are great. You think of the beach. Typically they like a little bit more shade, but this one actually can take a little bit more sun. So if you've ever tried a Majesty palm and they tend to always get burned up, you might try this Phoenix palm, Robolini. It's a really, really good one, and it's super, super easy to use, and I love it in containers. And in fact, you can grow it in the ground. It's not going to make it through the winter, but a lot of people do that as well. They plant them, they grow throughout the season, they look great, and then they go. But a lot of people will plant them in containers so they can bring them in during the winter. So this is going to be my thriller. And then I found my new favorite. This is one of my new favorite plants. Move this off to the side here a little bit. This is a begonia. I absolutely love begonias. And this is a Selenium Begonia. So these are really, really easy to grow. They bloom nonstop, so they're very similar to like kind of like a dragon wing begonia, so which would work too. But these are really easy to grow, and I just love these blooms on them. They're absolutely stunning. They're like little roses, and they just bloom nonstop, it seems like. I love these plants. This one is called light pink Selenium Begonia. So Selenium begonias are really, really popular, and I like to grab the ones that are the funkiest in shape. So typically when I'm planting a container, I always tell people, grab something that's kind of weird and kind of, you know, not quite shaped as perfectly as you want, because it's going to look great in a container when it's mixed with other plants, because you always want it to be able to use and do in different things. So like I love this one because it's got all these long trailing pieces. So it's a little stretched out, but it's actually going to trail over the side, but this is going to be kind of my color, and that's the kind of color that I'm working with, is this kind of, it's almost like an apricot, but it's really kind of that light pink. And again, I always say the reds are kind of more popular in the tropical colors. So I did grab a Caladium. Love Caladiums, these kind of elephant ear looking plants. This one's got a pink to a red kind of vein. So I'm trying to kind of take that pink and mold it into a red color. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking this white, which I love the contrast. I always think of the tropical look, especially in the shade. I need some contrast. I need some white in the shade because it really shows up well. So this Caladium is going to give me that white color. It's got some pink as those veins go a little bit further out. So you can see kind of that pink on the outside and then that really dark red on the inside. So now I've got a little bit of red in my container. So then I found another Caladium that's got more red. A little bit of pink on the underside. You can kind of see a little bit of that pink showing through. See if I can show you the underside of a leaf here. So you can kind of see that pink there on the underside of the leaf. So now I've got the red on the top, a little bit of pink in there, and it works perfectly with this Caladium. Now I'm not going to put them right next to each other so they don't have to be super, super noticeable how close they are, because now I've gone from pink in my blooms to pink in the veins of this Caladium, and then to the red Caladium, which also brings in the green color. Then, of course, I love the dark colored sweet potato vine. So this is going to give me that really cool color. What I love about this one is called, let's see, Sweet Caroline. So Sweet Caroline, Sweetheart, Jet Black. This is a sweet potato vine. What I love about this one is that new growth comes out green. So you get this new growth that's green, and then it goes burgundy in color. So it's really, really a cool one. So we'll use that for sure. I did grab another chartreuse lime green sweet potato vine, just because it's an always popular one. It's an easy one in case I need it. I also grabbed an asparagus fern, which I love because, again, you get these long, crazy shoots that you can use to kind of pop in and out and all over the container. So this is another great little filler. And then I even grabbed a bromeliad. Bromeliads are awesome plants. These are the types of bromeliads that typically are really grown for the foliage. So this brings that kind of white variegation. It's going to work great with this Caladium. It kind of pairs up. And then that pink color in the new growth is going to work great with my begonia. So what I'm going to do here is kind of a little bit different, kind of breaks the mold a little bit. And sometimes I like to go a little bit crazier sometimes and see what happens. And just kind of play with the fact that I've got all these different types of plants to choose from, and let's see if we can make something kind of different and unique. So because I've got this stronger palm, I can just kind of take this pot and tap it off around the sides and get it in there. Perfect. All right, so I'm going to take this and just kind of loosen up the root ball again, as I always do. I am going to put this actually right in the center of this container. It's going to allow me to work all these different plants around it in a very asymmetrical format. I know this palm is kind of getting out of the top of my screen here, but it's green up here just like it is down here. A little dead leaf there we can pull out. Loosen up the root ball, and then what time is it? It's time for our biotone. So we'll get that in there. Make sure that gets right to my root system. And in this case, I actually have my palm sitting up a little bit higher than grade, but that's because everything else is going to grade down to the sides. Sometimes I'll do that when I have a center plant that I want to get that height out of. I could actually take some of these lower limbs off of the palm if I really need to get it up a little bit higher, but for now I think it's going to work pretty well. So what I'm going to do here is I love that begonia. I know I got to get the begonia in there. So this is going to be fun because I'm basically just going to work around the entire container and just kind of, as I go through, kind of tell you my thought process here. Now this one I got to be really careful with. It's a little bit fragile. If you've ever worked with begonias, they can be a little fragile, especially when they get a little bit kind of stretched out like this. But that's what I wanted. I really wanted this kind of crazy habit on it. So I'm going to just put my hand in here. I'm going to kind of brace that just a little bit and tilt it over. Take my container out. Then I'm going to loosen the root ball. And then I just got to make sure that I've got enough space to get this in. I'm going to turn this just a little bit. I just got to be real careful with this guy and make sure that I put him in right where I want him so I'm not messing with him too much more after this. So see, I didn't even get it right. I kind of need to be there because I really want this guy kind of hanging over the edge. There we go. Perfect. All right, so I've got my begonia in. It looks good, and I can always kind of change it a little bit later if I need to. So I can kind of, take these branches. It came with a little stake because these can get floppy, so maybe I want this branch to kind of sit up a little bit higher. So I'm just going to put this little stake right down through there so I can prop that up. I'll probably have to come back and fix that a little bit later. But that looks pretty good. All right, so now let me just make sure I get my soil underneath, get it around the sides. Now I'm definitely going to need some more soil here. So let me just kind of take this container because I got the space to be able to do it and bring my soil level up. And then I'm going to need a little bit more soil. I always like to have an empty plastic pot around just so that I can fill it up. So if you've got something that's got a little bit of size that's just laying around, this one I just grabbed right before we started here today, just so I've got a container to work with. It's a little bit easier for me than say like just taking it straight out of the bag. So I just like to have a container laying around so that I can use it to get my soil right where I want it to go. Use my hand trowel. I can even use the pot just to get it in there. All right, now we've got our soil that we need. Okay, so there we go. There's the start of my tropical container. It's got the two plants that I really loved. I really wanted to get this Phoenix Robolini in there, this palm. I love this palm, it looks great, and I love this begonia. It just spoke to me. I know it's not in that red color, but I said I gotta have it. So I went and started looking at the Caladiums because the Caladiums really help pull those different colors out. This one's gonna look great with this begonia. So we're gonna pop that in next. Now, caladiums are bulbs, so sometimes when you open up the soil or take the pot off, you can actually see the bulbs in there. It's a lot of fun for kids to kind of be able to see, but you're going to see new spikes are going to be coming up here, so this is going to work great. I do want those leaves to kind of be able to face that begonia a little bit. I'm saving a little bit of space because I might put something in here. So I know you can't quite see that, but there's a little pocket right here. So maybe I need a little sweet potato vine or something in there. We'll see. I'm going to save it for now, and then we'll work around, and we'll just keep going around this container. I think next I definitely want to, I love this bromeliad. I'd really like to get this bromeliad in here if I could, because that's just going to add another component to it. But I think I'm going to actually, you know what I think I'm going to do? We're going to bring this other caladium and pop it over here. Let's start with that and see where that kind of takes us. So sometimes, like I said, you're kind of playing with this. This is something you would probably do while you're shopping around here. You might even come and grab one of us and say, hey, I need a little bit of help here. I'm a little lost. I'm not quite sure what I'm doing. Then we can kind of help guide you a little bit. Love that caladium. I actually grabbed 2 of them because I might want to put 2 together. I think I am. These were just little 4-inch, but I love the color so much that sometimes I buy 2 4-inch to kind of accomplish what a 6-inch plant would do. Just gives me a little bit more to work with there. So I'm loving that caladium there with that begonia. So that just by itself looks pretty cool, but I got some space back here, and I definitely want to use this bromeliad. So I'm going to use him real quick. And then I can kind of use my sweet potato vine and my asparagus fern as a little bit of a filler. So I think I'm going to pop him in right here. And I do love to take bromeliads and kind of put them on an angle. Bromeliads are tough plants. They are super, super tough, very easy to use. So they really, really work great because they can kind of face you. So you can see that, how it just kind of faces right out. So you can kind of angle them. They're really durable plants. Of course, yes, they're going to go in the winter, but most of our containers that we plant up are going to actually go away in the winter. Sometimes you'll have components that you can use again and again. But this is going to look really, really cool. That caladium popped in with it. All right, perfect. I really like that. So I've got my bromeliad. I've got my caladiums. I've got some spaces here that I can fill in with some of my trailers and my fillers. So let's see. I think what I want, when I'm looking at this front here, I see really a need for some trailers. I mean, I feel like I could use a little bit of color in there. Impatience actually would have looked pretty good in here, but I like this chartreuse lime green because this is a darker leaf on this begonia, so I don't want to go straight to that dark burgundy sweet potato vine. So I'm going to put this chartreuse lime green in here. That's really going to show up really, really well and be a great spiller. So there we go. And then you got this caladium kind of popping around. Then on this back side, we'll take the burgundy sweet potato vine and we'll work that in right back here on the back. Yep, that's perfect. And then I've got another one. So you're seeing here that I'm really packing it in. I'm doing this for the show, really, of being able to pack all this in. And so you can kind of see what it's going to look like here. And then I've got this asparagus fern. That's going to look awesome back here. It's really going to help fill it in. Now these things can get super, super tight. You're going to see a cool root system here. When you look at that asparagus fern, it's got all these kind of bulbs in there. It's really cool looking. So they can get kind of tight in that container, but it's pretty easy to take out. Then I think I've only really got kind of one more spot. So I'm going to shift this bromeliad over, get a little bit closer to my caladium here. And then I've got a spot for my asparagus fern. And then I've got this arm here that's really going to be able to kind of help me kind of work it in back through the plant. Let me show you this. So I've got this guy here, this really long shoot. And it just allows me to kind of bring it and add some different texture over here. So it kind of pops out. And that's what this asparagus fern is going to do for us, is allow us to kind of manipulate it and change it and move it around. Because it's very, very flexible and it works great in containers. All right. That really turned out pretty cool, actually. So now I've got like these little spikes sticking out here with my Asparagus Fern. It matches my sweet potato vine color. I've gone from this gorgeous pink begonia, the Selenium Begonia, which then ties in with my Caladium. The Caladium adds a little bit of that whiter color, which then ties in with the darker veins to this darker Caladium over here. That really works real with the burgundy on the sweet potato vine. And just by adding all of those colors and different variations in there, you get this amazing looking container. This Bromeliad looks great. So very, very easy to do. Instead of kind of keeping it very symmetrical again, I did the same thing. I wanted to make sure that I kept it asymmetrical. If I lose something, it's not going to kill my container. I can always go find a replacement. If I can't get the exact same plant, I can get something similar or something that I think is going to work. So this really turned out well. All I got to do is pop in some soil around the edges and it'll be done. Come back in a couple weeks, fertilize it, keep it blooming, keep it growing. We'll just clean up my pot here and finish it off. Make sure I get my dirt off of everything. And there we go. That one really turned out cool. I mean, that is definitely the front for sure. I've got my begonia that's going to just keep on blooming. I love that plant. Love the Selenium Begonias. It's becoming one of my new favorites. And then having a little Bromeliad in there, I can pop that out. I can pop the palm out. I could actually probably take a majority of this container inside for the winter season if I wanted to. Probably lose my sweet potato vine. But other than that, a lot of this could actually come inside with me if I wanted to. But it really, really turned out cool. Love the caladiums in there. So that's a tropical look for a shady spot. And this can actually take a little bit of sun. So caladiums are probably the one plant in here that I probably wouldn't really grow in a lot of sun. But really this Phoenix Robolini can take a fair amount of sun. The begonia can take a fair amount of sun. So if you've got something that gets shaded kind of for maybe 2 or 3 hours in a day, this would work great. But this is going to do great in a lot of shade. And it gives me that tropical look in a very shady spot. So I think that one really turned out nice. Let me clean up my mess here a little bit, and then I'll bring up my pink container. And I can kind of show you all that we did here today. So we did the pink, my pink theme, put a little bit of that sweet potato vine. It's really, really an easy one to do. Really looks great. My tropical container turned out amazing. It's got a lot of depth, a lot of diversity, and it's got a lot of different trailers, fillers, and then of course this gorgeous thriller that's just going to get taller and taller throughout the season. It looks amazing. I'm really happy with that. And then of course our coastal container, which really turned out well too. So I kind of started with a simple approach, and then we just got a little bit more elaborate as we kept on going. So this is very simple, and this one turned out great too. So I had a lot of fun planting up these containers, these themed containers. So I've got my coastal look, I've got my tropical look, I've got my favorite garden color in pink. These turned out great. They're super, super easy to do. So I hope you all can come in and check us out. We can help you do these yourself. They're super easy. There's so many different thoughts out there and examples. So really, really great way to kind of grow containers. And I see the comment from Cindy, she said not very much soil. Yeah, I did this kind of to pack it in and show you kind of a completed project. I probably wouldn't typically put as many in there as I did, but actually something like this is going to be perfectly fine. I mean, those caladiums don't need a lot of soil. The begonia's got enough space. It's got a lot of depth. So I've got soil underneath that I can grow into. I did kind of scrunch them in there. I typically probably wouldn't do that, but I wanted to be able to show you kind of a completed project, something that this is what it's going to look like in a couple years, or a couple months. Sorry, not a couple years. So in a couple months, this is what your finished product will look like. Typically, you might put, maybe you might omit 2 or 3 of the plants, but most of these are going to do fine. And really, most of my containers I have for about 2 or 3 months. And then by that point, I'm kind of itching to change a little bit. So I like to change my containers in the spring, summer, and fall, and even in the winter. So if I only get 3 or 4 months out of it, I'm okay with that. Because I can put on a show, and for having a party or something or a wedding, this is going to be a great way to kind of put on a show and show off your creativity and have fun with it. So really, really great. Hope you all enjoyed this. Thank you, Wendy. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Come in and see us. We've got lots and lots of options. There's millions and millions of different combinations that you can do for your containers. Dress up your front porch. Add some themes, add some ideas, some theme containers. Just do your traditional containers. There's so many things that you can do. They're a lot of fun. So I hope you all enjoy this, and we will see you next time. And have a great day, everybody. Bye.